If you're a homesteader and you're wondering, why is this being served up to me? Why is this important? Why do I even need to be here? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Friar Tuck. This is the first episode of Professor Tuck, which is a podcast that I'm starting to complement my channel. Just a little bit about me before we get into this topic. Uh, I've been homeless for the previous 2 years. A couple of months ago, because of my because of the money I was able to make through the digital economy, I have now become a beginning homesteader. And so, as my channel morphs to meet my new life situation, I have a new set of skills and understanding that I can share because I haven't always been homeless and I haven't always been poor. I've had a lot of successes in my life and I've had a lot of failures in my life. And I have picked up a lot of knowledge over the years. And there are some things that I, as somebody who not only has been previously homeless, but through my life skills and my life experience, I have the ability to bring some expertise to you that will probably be more beneficial to you than you actually think it will be. Okay, so these episodes, they're going to come out every Tuesday. You will be able to see them. They're going to be about 25 minutes to about 35 minutes long. I don't want them to be too long, just for other issues. But if you want to be able to get into this and understand why you as a homesteader not only need to understand how, what, why, and where and when to be able to set up and create a contract. When is a contract created? When is it binding? What things do I need to do to make it binding? Things like that. This is something that does not take a lawyer because I'm not a lawyer. I am, according to the law, I am not schooled in law, which means I don't have a legal degree. But this is something that you, as an individual, this is something that you do on an everyday basis, and you probably don't even know it. Whether you're a homesteader, you're a homeless person, or you live in a city, you don't realize that you're contracting with everything in which you do. And so, one thing that I would like to be able to bring to the forefront is a movie that really kind of pushed the needle for me as far as influencing kind of how important contracts are and why they became such uh, a central part of my life moving on once I saw that. So this was probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but it was suggested that I watch this movie called Paper Chase. It was made in the late 70s. The thing that you want to come away from this is you have two kids that are trying to get their legal degree, but the journey and the story is about finding this book that was written by a Harvard graduate uh, many years before, that had been like put on a side shelf, that never really made any real headway as far as, out in the marketplace getting a lot of books sold. But it was part of alumni, so therefore they had it. And they came across this book, and it talks about contracting in everyday life, and that was, I believe, the name of the book. And this is a docudrama. This is based upon a true story, at least as far as the book goes. That is true. And essentially, the argument that the guy makes, and the way that these guys come to understand not only law but just to be able to pass their classes and stuff, this helps them along the way. And uh, the way that the movie talks is that it's there for, or excuse me, when you have a conversation with you and me, okay, offer, acceptance, and consideration. Offer, hi, how are you? Acceptance, I'm doing good, how are you? Consideration, consideration means money or compensation. So does that, what compensation, what consideration are you getting? Well, you're getting information, you're getting a fulfilling conversation, you're getting to talk to somebody that you like or that you want to be able to talk to. You're talking to somebody that you've made friends with. So therefore, that is your consideration. It doesn't always need to be money. And so he saw the world through this viewpoint, that everything that you do is contract, all the way down to ordering a meal at a restaurant or going into a department store. You go into a department store, you have a price tag, that's an offer. You pick it up, you put it in your cart, that's acceptance. You take it to the register, you pay for it, that's consideration. Okay, so you have you have a contract in every single thing that you do. So if you're operating and everything that you do is in contract, just like when you play a game, let's say the board game Monopoly, that's a popular game that everybody plays. So don't you know the rules of the game? Don't you understand how to be able to use those rules to be able to benefit you? Do you have an understanding of what the objective of the game is? These are questions that everybody goes and asks, but yet you are contracting in everything that you do, all the way down to the basic conversation. uh, you are contracting. So wouldn't it be important that you understand the basic rules? Now, contracts are simple yet complex in some ways. It depends upon what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, these are very simple things such as governing law. Or is this going to be a private deal? And but yet you still want to have a section that says governing law. Why? Because even though you and your friend know that you are entering in, if you ever have to take it to a third party, you need to be able to have it properly interpreted as, oh, okay, this was a private agreement between these two. And so therefore we don't have jurisdiction because you did it in your private capacity. You didn't do it in your capacity as a US citizen. Okay, which is something that you'll learn to understand. And when it comes to enforcing your contract, you have to understand, especially if you're going across jurisdictional lines. Like, okay, I'm in Arizona, I'm doing business with somebody in Pennsylvania. How do i how do i deal with any legal ramifications that I may have with them, whether it be for supplies or whether it be for other things? Because when you go to a website and you order a product because you want to build a fence, you want to build a barn, you want to build something productive on your land, you're going there and you are taking their price. So they give you an offer of, this is what we'll send you all these supplies for this amount. You say, okay, I accept it by putting it in your cart. You pay for it by checking out. Therefore, you gave consideration. Therefore, you started your end of the contract. You paid them for it. Now, what is their service level agreement? So if you are in the corporate world, they also call this a service level agreement. What is it that I offer you in exchange? So if you are looking at warranties, if you're looking at anything like that, they call it a service level agreement, but it is the terms and conditions. It is just a different way in which they name it so that it can be interpreted in a different way. Um, you know, Terms and conditions, it all of a sudden has a bad connotation, but yet we can use the same word and we can say, this is our service level agreement. This is what we agree to give you. Still the terms and conditions, they just put a different word on it. Because in order for a contract to be enforceable, not only does it have to have a governing law, it has to have terms and conditions. And also what both parties are going to be giving in exchange for all of this. I'm going to give you this, you're going to give me that, so on and so forth. We're going to agree that it's going to happen on this day. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. Even though you shook on it by hand, and handshake agreements are enforceable, but do you know how to enforce a handshake agreement? Because if it's two guys out in the middle of nowhere, and they have a handshake, it's nothing but hearsay. So therefore, you're thinking, oh yeah, I can trust this guy. Da 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 da. Well, you know what? People get desperate. People get desperate in desperate ways, and when they're desperate, they will do dumb things, and those dumb things will be the things that cost you money, may put you in a bind, may back you against a corner, may be detrimental to you in one form or fashion. And so, if you're going to enter into these agreements, you got to at least know that you can enforce it, which means that you can go into any court, whether it be going to the Vatican, or excuse me, going into a Catholic church and having a bishop preside over it because you put it under canon law versus the United States. So therefore, you gave them jurisdiction to decide the fairness between the two parties. And this is kind of what you are doing as an individual, when you're not only when you're creating a contract, but this is kind of where you want to go. Sorry guys, I do lose my train of thought from time to time because my brain moves faster than my mouth sometimes, because I'm trying to articulate this into a decent into meat and potatoes instead of something that's all over the place. Because I got to do this for many years, and doing this for many years, it gave me an understanding to where there's just I can say certain things because I know what they mean. It's not necessarily jargon. It has to do with understanding, process and how things go and how things work. So, for example, if I say just do a notice, what does do a notice mean? Okay, to somebody who has experience in reading and writing and enforcing their contracts, they would know exactly what a notice is. Basically, whatever you put as a title on that document. So, notice, notice to vacate, notice to cease and desist, notice that you're ugly. Okay. There's all different ways. Is whatever that title is, that is the document, and then that in itself tells you the form in which the document must be written. Okay, and that is necessarily really the bare bones basic that you need to understand is that the different parts of a contract, how to enforce it. For example, if you want to enforce a handshake deal, in order to be able to have a handshake deal, you must have at least one or two witnesses. Okay, usually each side has their own witness. Okay, that way, we can get to the bottom of this because both witnesses should be able to concur on what really happened, instead of hearsay. Because when it's just two guys out in the middle of nowhere, it's hearsay, which means he said, she said, but there's your side, her side, and then the truth, and that's hearsay. And so you can't go out there and just do a handshake agreement without some sort of witness or some sort of document or enshrinement that you're actually doing that. For example, okay, I'll do this for you. You send me the money and I'll be there on Tuesday. Well, as soon as they send the money, now they've paid you for it. You now have evidence of it. So when they say, well, you didn't show up, I sent $60, now we get to question, well, where did the $60 come from? Things like that. You have to have some sort of record of what it is that you're doing along the way. But do you know how to procure records? Do you know what they have rules and procedures, whether it be civil rules of procedure or federal rules of civil procedure. You have different procedural rules that you need to be able to follow through on. So, like, which set of rules are you following through on? So, this is again why it's very important that you as an individual understand not only the procedural rules, but just everything that needs to be done in order to make sure that you have some form of agreement that you can enforce, because the court of law requires that you bring certain types of agreements. This is where the rules of evidence, the civil rules of evidence, and you've got the federal rules of evidence. You've got different, because because they're jurisdiction, and each jurisdiction has its own rules and procedures. And so you as an individual, you need to understand that, at its core basics. Okay, and so based upon which rules of procedure I'm operating under, what are what is allowable or admissible as evidence? What is it that they will take? So under the federal rules of evidence, and I believe you can do this in civil, I think it's all across the board. Under the federal rules of evidence, you can, as long as you bring something electronic, so like an email, it has a date and time stamp on it. A text message has a date and time stamp on it. A remittance of your records, like your call records and stuff like that. Uh, that has a date and time stamp on it. All of this stuff has date and time stamps on it. And because it has a date and time stamp on it, therefore you can use it as evidence. So therefore, if you are doing recordings, especially if they're digital, it comes with a date and time stamp. It's part of the programming, it's part of the metadata that is put in the back. Now you need to be able to show that metadata yourself, but at the end of the day, that if you don't have a piece of paper, you do have something, even in a text message. So before, because I'm having a contract dispute right now with an individual, because I'm frustrated that he's slacking. I'm dealing with some issues I don't want to deal with, that I shouldn't have to deal with if it was done properly. The guy's too busy trying to be cheap, and it's like he flashes money around, but yet people with money generally tend to do things right, and they'll pay a little bit more out of pocket versus poor people that just keep going for cheap options trying to save money, and whereas they end up spending more than what they would have actually spent. And so this gets frustrating because guess who has to deal with it? And so before I even made a phone call, I enshrined in a text message what was important, what was needed to know, which is you gave me inferior materials to be able to keep these goats. I've been chasing your goat for over an hour. I'm frustrated with this. You either need to provide me with adequate fencing, or you need to come get your animals by Wednesday. Okay, and so therefore, I was short, I was simple, I was to the point. Now, if I ever have to go to court, because come the 5th, if I don't, he's supposed to be here tomorrow. Come the 5th, if he isn't here by then, or he hasn't at least uh, uh, given me payment and said, sorry, dude, I'll be there when I can, at a bare minimum, just to make sure that he maintains ownership of his goats. Because the moment that his time comes out, this is what some people will call as a common law lien. But how you're doing a common law lien is that you can use text messages. Okay, if you are not here by end of business on this day, anything left behind will be considered abandoned. And should you come on this property after that time, or remain on this property after that time, you shall be considered as trespassing. Okay, well, therefore, in the court of law, because I have some sort of documentation that gave him notice, okay, because that's part of due process. I am able to get I'm able to get him to move, and move at the speed I need him to move, because he understands that the stakes are high for him, because this is the Wild West. There's not a lot that could happen to me if he does, because all what's he going to do? He's going to roll over, because he's I'll leave it alone. But um when you have contractual disputes, I'm boarding animals. You would never think that you would have a contractual dispute. You would never think that you had any would have any issues, and most of the time you probably won't. But at some point in time, you're going to come across a tool, and that tool is going to kind of run you ragged, make you chase your tail, and you're just going to get so frustrated. You're going to say, "Yo, enough is enough," and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to move along. Okay, and you're going to figure out a way to let this guy know that either he shapes up, or it's over and he needs to handle it. And at that point in time, it's just you're just them more rope um to proverbially hang themselves. Okay, so um you want to give them, you always have to give them an opportunity to fix it. Come get, you're paid up to this time, come get your stuff. If you're not here by this time, on this day, then you lose your stuff. um it's real simple. And yes, you think that you can do it, and sometimes you might get lucky because you're like, yeah, I called him on the phone, see, you see that. But we don't have record of that conversation unless we subpoena the records from your cell phone company, which therefore you have to go and request the record from your cell phone company, because you're going to be suing this guy in civil suit. Why do that when you can just take a moment, put it in a text message, and then make the phone call and just reiterate verbally what you've already put in writing? Okay, therefore, it gives you good standing. It allows you to document the process along. You should always consider documenting the process along the way. Why? Because you never know who's gonna be the oddball. But when they do, as long as you have all of your ducks in a row, because you follow a simple process of collecting documents and evidence and proof along the way, all of your communications and stuff like that, um when the time comes and you really have to take that swing, you can do it and already have all the stuff, and not be going, oh crap, well, I don't have any record, I didn't even send a text, it was all, oh man, I screwed all this up. Okay, because you set up a process of documentation in every deal that you get into. But that's not even really the half of the problem. When If you were going to do a contract, let's just say it's a written contract, or you're going to do something that has you're just going to do a basic outline. You could do it on a napkin. It's binding as long as it's on a napkin, as long as you have the governing law, terms and conditions, an offer and acceptance consideration, That's pretty much what makes it legal. Okay. You can even have witnesses and stuff like that. It can all be done on a napkin. You can even make a negotiable instrument on a napkin. Okay, because it's not the piece of paper it's written on. It's how it's written that makes it enforceable. That's what people don't realize. You can take it to a bank and get it monetized because it's properly. I unconditionally promise to pay the lump sum of da 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 on this day. Da 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 da. Okay. Well, now I just want to transfer that to you. You give me a small portion of my money, and I'll let you go after him if he wants to be a dumbass. Mm. That's the risk that they're taking when they buy your paper. But that's just kind of the way it is. But when some important things that should be in your contract. I mean, even though you only really need the well, they say to make a contract binding, it's got to have offer acceptance considering. So I'll do this, you do that, which is terms and conditions, and then a mode of payment, and I'll pay you this much, or I'll give you a bale of hay for this much, or whatever. I'll trade you feed a dollar for dollar, whatever. Okay, but you've given something, and that's basically what the terms and conditions are. The governing law lets people know what jurisdiction it's under so that it understands what laws it has to be coherent with. So if you're doing without the United States but within the state of Arizona, well, you're although most people don't know what that means, very few people do, is that I'm now in the common law state of Arizona, and I am now, this agreement is now bound by the laws of the common law state of Arizona because I'm without the United States and within the state of Arizona. Okay, so if you're not in the United States, then you are in the sovereign state of Arizona. Mm. Okay, so this is something that you got to realize that the governing law tells you the rules in which everything is governed by. You can put it under canon law, okay, but if you don't put it in writing, it's not gonna, or have some sort of enshrinement of it, then you're not gonna really know. Okay, so the other parts that are really really important that are not necessarily required but you should have because it's extremely important is what's dispute resolution. I have a contract that I wrote for my janitorial business with my largest client, and they paid me a hefty sum every month, and I put in little clauses of, this is how much it's going to go up, and this is what we're expected to do, this is what you're expected to do. I get a place to store my on-site equipment, da 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 da. So that's kind of all the terms and conditions. But what happens if they have a problem with me? I don't want them going and canceling that contract. So by putting a dispute resolution in there, by saying, okay, first time you come to me, we'll resolve it. Second time, we'll really look in and see what's really going on. And by the third time, at that point in time, you have any and all rights to terminate this contract without any penalty. Okay, so they get an understanding is that they at least have to try 3 times to get me, to fix one issue. So it's a different issue this time, a different issue that time. It's just one. It's when it's the same issue and it becomes repetitive. Okay, because whenever they would bring something to us, they're like, hey, we need to fix it. Okay, fine, we'll fix it. Not a problem. Then after that, it's like, okay, now we need to look at it. And then after that, it's like, okay, well, we might lose this contract because apparently we can't seem to get it through a thick head that we're missing this section or whatever. Okay, so this is why you want to have some sort of dispute resolution. This dispute resolution gives you not only, it tells you how to resolve a dispute. Okay, call me. I prefer to be able to have some sort of verbal communication before you run and do stuff because I get the opportunity first choice to be able to fix the issue before the contract is terminated. And if you terminate the contract just because you want to terminate the contract, well, then I'm entitled to this, which you still have the right to do, but this is what I'm entitled to. But if it's this, that way, if they really want to get out of it and not pay any money, they're going to really have to trip you up. Okay. But this is the purpose of dispute resolution, is not only to tell you how to resolve disputes, but to be able to protect you from being taken advantage of, from being shown or have other things that are done to you. that are not going to necessarily work for you. Okay, so we've got to talk a little bit about contracts and stuff like that. What I want to say is I do this. I do this on the side. If you are having an issue with a contract and you'd like to be able to, have some advice on how you could resolve it, I'd be more than happy to assist you along in that process. You'll have to reach out to me via email, friartuck@hobotuck.com. However, if you are wanting to learn more and learn how to actually create your own contract, either one, make sure you watch this podcast every week. And two, you should come on over to my Contracting in Everyday Life collection in over on Patreon, and you will definitely be able to get more of the meats and potatoes and all that good stuff that is kind of stored up here that I'm not necessarily always sharing with you because it's just I'm putting it out in a specific way. But anyways, those are the different ways that you guys can take advantage of the knowledge in which I have to be able to benefit yourselves. And if this is something that you'd like, I'd love to be able to help you. Okay, so thanks for being here. I hope I've earned a subscription for you. If you think that this is important, you are in the homesteading community or you are in the prepping community, make sure to share it if you've made it this far. Thanks for being here, guys, and I will see you in the next video.